The house was too quiet now. For 37 years, it had hummed with Richard's presence, his heavy footsteps on the oak floors, the clink of his coffee mug in the sink, the low murmur of his voice as he tinkered in his garage late into the night. But 6 months ago, the heart attack stole him away, sudden and merciless, leaving me, Evelyn, alone in a home that felt like a stranger's. I was 68, and the silence was a weight I couldn't shake. The garage was the worst of it. Richard had always kept it locked, a private sanctuary where he'd retreat after dinner, claiming he needed just a few minutes that often stretched into hours. I never questioned it. He was a man of habits, and I loved him for them, the way he'd whistle old jazz tunes, the way his calloused hands felt against mine. The garage was his space, and I had the kitchen, the garden, the photo albums. That was our unspoken deal. But after he was gone, the locked door became a splinter in my mind. I'd pass it daily, its faded red paint peeling like old skin, and wonder why he'd been so protective of it. The key hung on a hook in the kitchen, untouched since his death. I'd stare at it, feeling a tug of curiosity laced with dread. What was in there that he'd kept from me? Tools, car parts, or something else, something I wasn't ready to face. One October evening, with the air sharp and the leaves crunching underfoot, I couldn't stand it anymore. The loneliness had gnawed at me all day, and the garage door seemed to taunt me, its silence louder than the emptiness of the house. I grabbed the key, my hands trembling, and stood before the door. The lock was stiff, rusted from years of neglect, but it gave way with a reluctant click. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint smell of oil. I flicked on the light, a single bulb dangling from the ceiling, casting shadows across the cluttered space. Shelves lined the walls, stuffed with jars of screws, old manuals, and half-finished projects. A workbench sat in the center, covered with tools and a tarp draped over something large and shapeless. My heart thudded. This wasn't just a workshop. It felt like a vault, guarding something Richard had hidden from me. I stepped forward, my slippers scuffing against the concrete floor. The tarp was heavy, its edges frayed. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over it. What if this changed everything? What if I found something that broke the memory of the man I loved? But I had to know. I pulled the tarp away, and my breath caught. Beneath it was a wooden chest, intricately carved with patterns I didn't recognize, swirling lines and symbols that looked almost ancient. It was beautiful, but unsettling, like something from another time. A small brass lock secured it, and I realized the key from the garage door wouldn't fit. I rummaged through Richard's tools, my hands shaking, until I found a tiny key tucked inside a tin can on the shelf. The chest opened with a groan, revealing a stack of leather-bound journals, their pages yellowed and worn. My fingers brushed the top one, and I opened it to find Richard's handwriting, neat, deliberate, but filled with words that made no sense. Dates, numbers, cryptic phrases like, "The signal is stronger tonight, and she mustn't know." My stomach twisted. Who was she? Me? Someone else? I sank onto a stool, the journal trembling in my hands. Richard had always been practical, a man of routine, not secrets. Yet here was evidence of a life I didn't know, a life he'd kept locked away. The entries spanned years, detailing late-night experiments, strange lights in the sky, and a project he was building in the garage. I glanced around, half expecting to see some machine or device, but there was nothing except the chest and the journals. As I read on, the words grew more urgent. "The connection is real," he wrote in an entry dated a year before his death. "I've heard her voice. She's calling me." My heart sank. Her. Was there another woman? The thought stung, But it didn't fit. Richard had been devoted. Always home. Always mine. Or so I'd believed. I closed the journal. My mind racing. The garage felt colder now. The shadows deeper. I didn't know what I'd expected to find old car parts. Maybe a forgotten hobby, but not this. Not a mystery that made me question the man I'd shared my life with. I locked the chest and the garage, slipping the key into my pocket. I couldn't read more tonight. The weight of it was too much. Back in the house, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the key. The man I loved had built a wall between us, one I'd never seen until now. But I wasn't ready to let it stand. Tomorrow, I'd go back. I'd read every journal, uncover every secret. Because if Richard had hidden something from me, I deserved to know why. Sleep eluded me that night. The key burned in my pocket, a constant reminder of the journals waiting in the garage. By morning, the curiosity had hardened into resolve. I couldn't let Richard's secrets stay buried. Whatever he'd hidden, it was part of him, and I needed to understand. The garage felt different in the daylight. Less menacing, but no less heavy. I opened the chest again, the creak of its hinges echoing in the quiet. I pulled out the second journal, its leather cover worn soft from handling. The entries were older, from the early years of our marriage. Richard wrote about his job at the observatory, his fascination with the stars, and his growing obsession with something he called the signal. It's not just noise, he wrote in 1987. There's a pattern, a rhythm. It's like a voice, faint but deliberate. I frowned, trying to recall those years. Richard had worked late often, but I'd assumed it was the demands of his job. Had he been chasing this signal even then? Why hadn't he told me? As I read, the entries grew more technical, charts of frequencies, sketches of antennas, calculations I couldn't follow. But woven through the data were moments of raw emotion. Evelyn deserves better than a man distracted by shadows, he wrote in 1990. But I can't stop. It's bigger than us. My throat tightened. He'd loved me, but something had pulled him away, something he couldn't share. I spent hours poring over the journals, each one peeling back another layer of Richard's hidden life. He described building a device in the garage, something to amplify the signal. There were diagrams of circuits and strange, dome-like structures. I searched the garage again, moving boxes and tools, but found no trace of it. Had he dismantled it? Hidden it somewhere else? One entry stopped me cold. Dated 2005. It read, "She spoke to me last night." Not in words, but in images, flashes of a place I've never seen. A city of light. Towers that hum with energy. She says they're waiting. My hands shook. Who was this she? A delusion? A metaphor? Or something real? Something Richard believed in so fiercely he'd kept it from me. I remembered the fights we'd had around that time. I'd accused him of pulling away, of spending too much time in the garage. He'd brush it off, saying he was tinkering, but his eyes were distant, like he was somewhere else. Now I understood. He wasn't just tinkering. He was chasing a mystery, one he thought I wouldn't understand or wouldn't believe. By afternoon, I'd reached the third journal. The tone had shifted. Darker now. Richard wrote about sleepless nights, headaches, and a growing fear that he was losing himself. The signal is inside me now, he wrote in 2010. It's changing me. I don't know how much time I have. I closed the journal, my chest tight. Had this obsession driven him to his death? Had it weakened his heart? I stepped outside for air, the autumn wind biting my cheeks. The garage loomed behind me, no longer just a shed but a Pandora's box. Part of me wanted to burn the journals, to preserve the Richard I'd known steady, loving, Mine. But another part, the part that had loved him through every quiet moment, needed to know the truth. Who was he? Really? And what had he found in that garage? I went back inside, determined to finish what I'd started. The next journal was thinner, its entries sparse. Richard wrote about a final test, a moment when he'd know if the signal was real. There was no date, no explanation, just a sketch of the chest itself, with a note, "If I fail, this is all that's left." My heart sank. The chest wasn't just a container, it was his legacy, his confession. I didn't notice the tears until they blurred the page. Richard had carried this alone, and I'd never known. I'd cooked his dinners, tended our garden, lived our life, while he wrestled with something beyond my reach. The guilt was sharp, but so was the anger. Why hadn't he trusted me? Why had he locked this part of himself away? As the sun set, I locked the garage again, the journals tucked back into the chest. I wasn't ready to let them go. Not yet. There were still 4 journals left, and I knew they held the answers. But for now, I needed to sit with what I'd learned, that the man I'd loved had been more than I'd ever imagined, and maybe more than I could ever understand. The next morning, I woke with a heaviness I couldn't shake. The journals had invaded my dreams, Richard's handwriting swirling into stars, his voice whispering words I couldn't catch. I made coffee, the routine grounding me, but the key in my pocket felt like a pulse. I had to go back. In the garage, the chest seemed to wait for me, its carved patterns catching the morning light. I opened the 4th journal, its pages brittle. The entries were from 2015, and Richard's tone had grown frantic. "The device is complete," he wrote. "Tonight, I'll test it. If it works, everything changes." My eyes scanned the garage again, desperate for a sign of this device. Nothing. The entries detailed his preparations, calibrating frequencies, adjusting components, listening for the signal. He described it as a hum, a vibration that felt alive. "It's not just sound," he wrote. "It's a bridge, a way to them." Them. The word sent a chill through me. Who were they? Extraterrestrials? Spirits? Or just figments of a tired mind? I found a photo tucked between the pages, a Polaroid of Richard standing in the garage, holding a strange, dome-shaped object made of wires and metal. He was smiling, but his eyes were hollow, like he hadn't slept in days. I touched the photo, my fingers tracing his face. This was my Richard, but not the man I'd known. This was someone consumed. The journal ended abruptly. With a single line, "I heard them. They're real." My stomach twisted. I reached for the 5th journal, hoping for clarity. It began with an apology. "Evelyn, if you ever read this, I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't risk it. You're my anchor, but this is my burden." Tears stung my eyes. He'd written to me, knowing I might find this someday. He described the night of the test. The device had worked, he claimed, connecting him to something beyond Earth. "They showed me their world," he wrote. "A place of light and sound, where time doesn't exist. They want to share it, but there's a cost." The cost wasn't clear, but the next entries were chaotic, filled with references to sacrifices and limits of the human body. I set the journal down, my hands trembling. Had Richard lost his mind? Or had he found something real? Something so profound it broke him? I wanted to believe it was delusion, but the detail in his notes, the math, the sketches, the precision felt too deliberate for madness. I spent the day cross-referencing the journals, piecing together his project. He'd built an antenna, a receiver of sorts, designed to capture signals from deep space. But it wasn't just scientific. He believed it was a conversation, a dialogue with beings who'd chosen him. The thought was absurd, yet it explained the late nights, the locked door, the distance in his eyes. By evening, I was exhausted but restless. I wandered the house, seeing Richard everywhere, in the worn armchair, the scuff marks on the floor. I stopped at a photo of us from our 10th anniversary, laughing at a beach picnic. Had he been chasing signals even then? Had our life been a lie? I returned to the garage, driven by a need to understand. The 5th journal ended with a warning: the device must stay hidden. If they find it, they'll come for it. Who were they? The beings he'd contacted? Or someone closer, government? Colleagues? Enemies? The paranoia in his words was new, unsettling. I searched the garage again, moving shelves, checking under the workbench. Tucked behind a stack of crates, I found a hidden panel in the wall. My heart raced as I pried it open, revealing a small, dusty box. Inside was the device from the Polaroid compact. Intricate, its wires gleaming faintly in the light. It hummed softly, though it wasn't plugged in. I froze, the hum vibrating through my fingers. This was real. Whatever Richard had built, it was here, alive in some way I couldn't comprehend. I wrapped it carefully in a cloth and placed it back in the box. I didn't know what it was or what it could do, but I knew I couldn't leave it exposed. As I locked the garage, the weight of Richard's secret settled over me. He'd found something extraordinary, but it had cost him maybe everything. I wasn't sure I was ready to carry that burden, but I couldn't turn back now. The journals, the device, the truth, they were mine to unravel. The device sat on my kitchen table, wrapped in its cloth, an intruder in my home. I hadn't touched it since finding it last night, but its faint hum lingered in my mind, like a whisper I couldn't ignore. The journals were stacked beside it, their pages a map to Richard's hidden world. I was scared off what it meant, of what it might do, but I was also tethered to it, bound by the need to know. I opened the 6th journal, dated 2018. Richard's handwriting was shakier now, the ink smudged in places. The device is unstable, he wrote. The connection is stronger, but it's draining me. I see their world in my dreams, but it's not a gift. It's a warning. My chest tightened. He'd known it was dangerous, yet he'd kept going. Why? The entries described physical symptoms: migraines, dizziness, moments where he'd black out and wake up hours later, unsure of what he'd done. He wrote about hiding the device, fearing they would find it. I still didn't know who they were, but the fear in his words was real. He mentioned a colleague, Dr. Helen Carter, who'd worked with him at the observatory. She suspects, he wrote. I can't let her know. I remembered Helen sharp, ambitious, always asking Richard about his side projects. She'd visited after his funeral, her eyes lingering on the garage door. Had she known something? I made a mental note to find her, though the thought of confronting her made my stomach churn. What if she was part of this? The journal ended with a plea. Evelyn, if you find this, destroy the device. It's not what I thought. The words hit like a punch. Destroy it. After all he'd sacrificed. I looked at the cloth-covered lump on the table. Could I do it? Could I erase what he'd spent his life chasing? I spent the day wrestling with that question. Part of me wanted to smash the device, to end this mystery and reclaim the Richard I'd loved. But another part, the part that still heard his voice in the quiet, needed to understand. What had he seen? What had he heard? And why had it been worth hiding from me? By afternoon, I was back in the garage, searching for anything I'd missed. I found a notebook tucked inside a toolbox, its pages filled with letters addressed to me. They weren't dated, but they felt recent, written in a hurried scrawl. Evelyn, I love you. One began. I wanted to protect you from this. The signal isn't just a message, it's a door. And I'm afraid of what's on the other side. My heart ached. He'd wanted to protect me, but he'd left me alone with this. The letters spoke of his fear, his regret, but also his awe. They're not like us, he wrote. They're ancient, vast, and they've been watching us for centuries. I thought I could bridge our worlds, but I was wrong. I closed the notebook, tears streaming down my face. He'd been so alone in this, and I'd never known. I returned to the house, the device still on the table. I unwrapped it, studying its strange design, wires twisted into patterns that echoed the carvings on the chest. It was beautiful in a haunting way, like a relic from a forgotten civilization. I touched it, and the hum grew louder, vibrating through my fingertips. For a moment, I thought I saw something, a flicker of light, a shape in my mind's eye, a tower, glowing against a starless sky. I pulled my hand back, my breath ragged. Was this what Richard had seen? Was this what had consumed him? I wrapped the device again, my hand shaking. I couldn't destroy it, not yet. But I couldn't ignore it either. I needed answers. And Helen Carter was the only lead I had. I found her number in an old address book and dialed, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. She answered on the third ring, her tone guarded. Evelyn. It's been a while. I didn't waste time. I found something in Richard's garage. I need to talk. There was a long pause. Then, I'll come tomorrow. As I hung up, the house felt smaller, the walls closing in. The device hummed faintly, a reminder that I was no longer just a widow grieving her husband. I was a woman holding a secret that might change everything or destroy me. Helen arrived at noon, her silver SUV gleaming in the driveway. She was in her late 50s, her hair pulled back tightly, her eyes sharp as ever. I invited her in, the device hidden upstairs in a drawer. I wasn't ready to show it yet, not until I knew what she knew. We sat at the kitchen table, coffee steaming between us. You said you found something, she began, her voice careful. I nodded, studying her. Richard's journals. And something else. Her eyes flickered, but she stayed composed. He was always secretive about his projects, she said, even at the observatory. I leaned forward. He wrote about a signal, something he was trying to contact. Did you know? Her fingers tightened around her mug. He mentioned it once. Years ago. I thought it was a side project. Nothing serious. But her tone was off. Too guarded. She was hiding something. I pressed her, recounting the journals, the signals, the device, the cryptic references to them. Her face grew pale. Evelyn, you need to be careful. Richard was obsessed. He stopped coming to work regularly, started missing deadlines. I warned him to stop, but he wouldn't listen. What was he chasing? I asked, my voice sharp. She hesitated, then sighed. He believed he'd found evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. Not just signals, but a connectiona way to communicate. I thought he was losing it. The observatory let him go in 2019. My heart sank. Fired. He'd never told me. He'd said he retired early, that he wanted more time at home. Another lie. Did you ever see the device? I asked. She shook her head, but her eyes darted to the hallway, toward the garage. No, but he talked about it. Said it was dangerous. I thought he was paranoid. I didn't trust her. Not fully. But I needed her knowledge. Come with me, I said, leading her to the garage. I opened the chest, showing her the journals. Her hands trembled as she flipped through them. This is incredible, she whispered. He was further along than I thought. What do you mean? I demanded. She looked at me. Her eyes conflicted. He wasn't just receiving signals. He was sending them. He believed he'd made contact. My mind reeled. Contact? With what? I thought of the device upstairs. Its hum. The flicker of light I'd seen. Was it still active? Helen wanted to see it. But I stalled. I'll show you tomorrow. I lied. I need time. She nodded. Reluctant. And left, promising to return. I locked the door behind her. My heart pounding. She knew more than she was saying. And I didn't trust her intentions. That night, I brought the device to the living room, unwrapping it under the soft glow of a lamp. The hum was stronger now, almost rhythmic. I opened the 7th journal, hoping for clarity. Richard wrote about the first successful contact in 2020. They answered. He wrote. Not in words, but in visions. They showed me their homey a place of endless light. They want to share it, but only if we're ready. Ready for what? The question gnawed at me. The journal described the device as a key, a way to open a door to their world. But it was unstable, draining his energy, his health. I'm paying the price, he wrote. But it's worth it to know we're not alone. I touched the device again, and the hum intensified. This time, the vision was clearer, a city of towering spires, glowing with a light that felt alive. I saw figures, not human but not threatening, moving in harmony. Then, a voice, not sound, but a thought. You hold the key. Choose wisely. I yanked my hand away, gasping. Was this real? Or was I falling into the same obsession that had consumed Richard? I wrapped the device and hid it again, my mind racing. Helen's visit had raised more questions than answers. Was she an ally or a threat? And what did the device want from me? I felt Richard's presence in the quiet, urging me to keep going, to finish what he'd started. But I wasn't sure I could or if I should. The vision haunted me all night. The glowing city, the voiceless figures, the words in my mind. Choose wisely. I woke with a start, the device's hum echoing in my memory. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Whatever Richard had built, it was alive, connected to something I couldn't fully grasp. But I wasn't ready to give up. I needed to understand, for him and for me. I opened the 8th journal, the final one. Its pages were sparse, the entries erratic. Richard wrote about the toll of the connection, nosebleeds, fainting spells, moments where he felt unmoored from reality. The device is a bridge, he wrote in 2022, but it's breaking me. I can't stop now. They're so close. The last entry was dated a week before his death. I saw her today. It read, not Evelyn, but someone like her. She said my time is almost up, but the key must be protected. Evelyn, if you're reading this, don't use it. Destroy it. I love you. My heart broke. He'd known he was dying, and he'd still kept this from me. I sat back, tears streaming down my face. Richard hadn't been unfaithful, not in the way I'd feared. The she wasn't a woman, but something else, something from the other side of that bridge. But what did it mean? And why destroy the device if it was his life's work? I needed answers, and Helen was my only hope. I called her, my voice firm. Come back. I'll show you the device. She arrived within the hour, her eyes bright with curiosity. I led her to the living room, where the device sat unwrapped, its wires glinting. She gasped, reaching for it, but I stopped her. Tell me everything first. She hesitated, then spoke. Richard was part of a project at the observatory. Years ago, we were studying deep space signals, anomalies we couldn't explain. Most of us dismissed them as noise. But Richard didn't. He started working alone, building something to amplify them. I thought he was crazy, but he showed me data patterns that shouldn't exist. I told him to stop, that it was dangerous, but he wouldn't. Did you know about this? I gestured to the device. She shook her head. Not this exactly, but I suspected he'd built something. After he was fired, he cut contact. I didn't know he'd gone this far. I didn't fully believe her, but I let her examine the device. She touched it, and her eyes widened. It's active, she whispered. It's still receiving. I felt a chill. Receiving what? I told her about the vision, the voice. Her face paled. That's what he described. A connection. Not just signals, but a presence. She urged me to turn it off, to destroy it. It killed him. Evelyn. It's too much for a human mind. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to know what Richard had died for. I asked her to help me activate it, to see what he'd seen. She refused, her voice sharp. You don't know what you're asking. It's not safe. We argued, her fear clashing with my determination. Finally, she relented, but only if we took precautions. She spent the day studying the journals, piecing together Richard's process. By evening, she'd rigged a makeshift interface to monitor the device's output. If we do this, she said, you need to be ready for what comes next. We powered it on, the hum filling the room. The air felt charged, like a storm was brewing. I closed my eyes, and the vision returned stronger, clearer. The city of light pulsed, its towers singing. The figures were closer now, their forms indistinct but welcoming. The voice came again, you hold the key. Open the door. I opened my eyes, gasping. Helen was staring at me, her face ashen. What did you see? She asked. I told her, and she shook her head. That's what Richard saw. It's not just a signal, it's an invitation. An invitation to what? I didn't know, but I felt the pull. The same pull that had consumed Richard. As Helen packed up, she warned me again. Don't use it alone. Promise me. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. The device was a door, and I was standing on its threshold. Richard had crossed it, and it had cost him his life. But I wasn't ready to walk away, not yet. Helen's warning echoed in my mind, but the device's hum was louder. After she left, I sat alone, staring at it. The journals, the visions, Richard's sacrifice, they all pointed to one truth. This was bigger than me, than him, than our life together. I couldn't destroy it, not without knowing what it was. But I also couldn't ignore the fear clawing at me. What if Helen was right? What if this thing was dangerous? I spent the next day researching, digging through Richard's notes for clues. The journals mentioned a frequency, a specific signal he'd tuned the device to. I found a diagram labeled Final Calibration, with numbers and settings I didn't understand. But I didn't need to. The device was already active, humming with a life of its own. All I had to do was listen. I waited until night, when the house was quiet and the world felt still. I placed the device on the coffee table, its wires glinting in the lamplight. I hesitated, my hand hovering over it. Richard's last words rang in my ears, don't use it. Destroy it. But he'd also written of wonder, of a world beyond ours. I needed to know which was true. I touched the device, and the hum surged, vibrating through my bones. The room faded, and the vision swallowed me. I was in the city of light again, its towers pulsing with energy. The figures were clearer, now not human, but not alien either. They were forms of light, shifting and fluid. Their presence warm but overwhelming. The voice returned. Stronger, you are the keeper now. Open the door. Or close it forever. I pulled back, my heart racing. The room snapped into focus. The device still humming. I was shaking, but not from fear excitement. Maybe. Or something deeper. I felt connected. Not just to Richard, but to something vast. Something that made our world seem small. But the cost, Richard had paid it. Was I willing to? I called Helen. My voice unsteady. I used it again. I admitted. She was furious. Her words sharp over the phone. Evelyn, you promised. You don't know what you're dealing with. I told her about the vision. The voice. She went quiet. Then said, I'm coming over. Don't touch it again. She arrived within the hour. Her face drawn. She brought equipment meters. Laptops. Things I didn't recognize. We need to measure its output. She said. If it's sending signals, someone else might pick them up. Someone else. The mysterious they from Richard's journals. I hadn't considered that. We set up her equipment. The device humming steadily. The meters spiked. Numbers flashing wildly. Helen's eyes widened. This isn't just receiving, she said. It's transmitting. And it's strong. My stomach dropped. Transmitting to who? Or what? Helen worked late into the night, her fingers flying over her laptop. She showed me data graphs of signals that matched Richard's notes, but were far more complex. He wasn't imagining it, she said, almost to herself. He was communicating with something. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. We need to shut it down. Evelyn. It's not safe. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed one more piece of the puzzle. Richard's final moment. The journals hinted at a last test. A moment when he'd fully opened the door. I asked Helen to help me recreate it. She refused, her voice rising. You're playing with fire. Richard died because of this. Her words stung, but they also fueled me. Then help me understand why. I said. I owe him that. She stared at me, then sighed. One test. Then we destroy it. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I could keep that promise. We followed Richard's notes, adjusting the device's settings. The hum grew louder, the air electric. I closed my eyes, and the vision hit like a wave. The city was brighter, the figures closer. They reached out, their touch like a current through my mind. Choose, the voice said. Join us, or let us go. I opened my eyes, gasping. Helen was staring at the meters, her face pale. It's off the charts, she whispered. Evelyn, we have to stop. But I couldn't. Not now. I was so close to understanding Richard's truth, to knowing what he'd died for. The air in the living room crackled with tension. Helen's hands hovered over her laptop, her eyes darting between the device and me. Evelyn, we're in over our heads, she said, her voice tight. This isn't just Richard's project anymore. It's bigger, too big. But I was past caution. The vision had shaken me, but it had also lit a fire. I needed to know what Richard had known, what he'd seen in his final moments. We adjusted the device again, following the last page of his journal. The hum became a pulse, steady and strong, like a heartbeat. Helen's meters screamed, red lights flashing. It's transmitting at full strength, she said. If anyone's listening, they'll hear this. I didn't care. Let them hear. I needed answers. I touched the device, and the world dissolved. The city of light was all around me now, its towers singing a song that vibrated in my chest. The figures were close, their forms almost tangible. They weren't threatening, but their presence was overwhelming, like staring into the sun. The voice filled my mind. You are the keeper. The door is open. Step through, or close it forever. I saw Richard not in the vision, but in my memory. His smile, his touch, the way he'd look at me across the dinner table. He'd wanted to protect me, but he'd also wanted this connection. Discovery. A truth bigger than us. I felt him urging me forward, but also warning me back. Choose wisely. The vision shifted, showing me glimpses of their world, a place of harmony, knowledge, beauty beyond words. But there was a shadow, a cost I couldn't see. Richard had paid it, and now it was my turn to decide. I pulled my hand away, the room snapping back into focus. Helen was shouting, her voice distant. Evelyn. It's overloading. The device was glowing now, its wires sparking. Helen yanked at its connections, trying to shut it down. I grabbed her arm. Wait. I need to know. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. It's killing you, just like it killed him. But I wasn't ready to stop. I pushed her aside and touched the device again. The vision roared back, stronger, pulling me in. The figures were speaking now, not in words, but in feelings, hope, longing, but also urgency. The door cannot stay open. Choose. I saw Richard's face again, not in memory, but in the vision, his eyes pleading. Evelyn. He seemed to say. Let it go. I tore my hand away, collapsing to the floor. The device sparked violently, then went silent. Its hum gone. Helen was at my side, her hands on my shoulders. Are you okay? She asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, though I wasn't sure. The vision lingered, a weight in my chest. We sat in silence, the device dark and lifeless. It's dead, Helen said, checking her meters. Whatever it was doing, it's done. I stared at it, feeling both relief and loss. I'd seen what Richard had seen, felt what he'd felt. But I'd also seen the cost, the toll it took on him, and nearly on me. The next morning, we buried the device in the backyard, under the oak tree Richard had loved. I kept the journals, unable to part with them. They were his voice, his truth, even if I'd never fully understand it. Helen stayed for coffee, her demeanor softer now. He loved you, she said. He thought he was protecting you. I know, I said, my voice steady. But I wish he'd trusted me. She nodded, and we sat in the quiet, two women bound by a man's secret. I didn't know if I'd made the right choice, closing the door instead of stepping through. But I knew I'd chosen life, mine, and maybe humanity's. The house felt different now, lighter but not empty. Richard's presence was still here, in the walls, the garden, the memories we'd built. I'd uncovered his secret, walked his path, and come back whole. And in that, I found peace, not in the answers, but in the love we'd shared, flawed and beautiful, across a lifetime.